An unknown alien girl took off her hoodie and the human couldn't believe his eyes. The rain fell hard on the streets of Newport City, covering everything in silver mist. Daniel kept his head down as he walked through the busy night market. Neon signs glowing above him, vendors shouted about their fresh food, their fake jewelry, their real alien tech. He wasn't here to buy anything, he was just passing through on his way home. But then he saw her. She was sitting in the darkest corner of the market, far from the bright stalls and the noise. A hood covered most of her face, and her small frame was wrapped in a heavy, wet jacket. She didn't move much, except to pull the jacket tighter whenever someone passed too close. Daniel might have kept walking, but something about her stillness felt wrong, like she was hiding from more than just the cold rain. A man selling grilled meat called out to him, but Daniel waved him away. His eyes stayed on the hooded girl. She wasn't looking at the food, or the crowd, or the flashing signs. She was watching the shadows between the stalls, like she expected something to come out of them. Then Daniel noticed two men at the far end of the market. They were wearing dark armor that didn't match any Earth police or military. They moved slowly, scanning faces, looking at people one by one, and then one of them pointed in her direction. The hooded girl tensed, her hands clutching the strap of a worn leather bag. The two armored men began moving toward her. Daniel felt his heartbeat speed up. He didn't know her, and he didn't know what trouble she was in, but she looked too young, too scared. And those men looked like trouble. Before he could decide what to do, she stood and started walking quickly away. Her boots splashed through puddles, her head staying low. The men followed without hesitation. Pushing through the crowd, Daniel moved too, following her without even knowing why. Maybe it was curiosity, or maybe it was something else. Something like instinct. She turned into a side street, trying to lose them. Daniel caught up and stepped in front of her, blocking her path. Up close, she looked even smaller, her shoulders shaking under the wet fabric. "Stop," he said quietly. She froze, her hidden eyes locked on him. The sound of heavy boots grew louder behind them. "Are they chasing you?" he asked. She hesitated, then gave the slightest nod. "Why?" he asked again. Her voice was soft but urgent. "If they take me, I'll die." Something about the way she said it made him believe her instantly. The boots were close now, maybe 20 steps away. Daniel glanced over his shoulder, then back at her. "Come on," he said, grabbing her hand. Her skin felt warm, almost too warm, even in the cold rain. She didn't resist as he pulled her toward a narrow alley. Behind them, the men shouted something in a language Daniel didn't understand. They ran past overflowing trash bins and flickering street lamps. The smell of wet metal and engine oil filled the air. The girl's breathing was fast, but her steps were steady. Daniel didn't know how long they could run before being caught, but one thing was clear. Whatever was under that hood, it was something those armored men wanted badly, and he was now part of it. Whether he liked it or not, at the far end of the alley, Daniel stopped and pressed her against a wall. "Stay quiet," he whispered. The boots and voices came closer, then slowed. Shadows moved across the mouth of the alley. Daniel held his breath. The girl's hood dripped water onto her cheeks, but she didn't make a sound. The men paused, looked around, then walked past. Daniel waited a few more seconds. Before letting out a breath, he turned to her. "Who are you?" he asked. She didn't answer. Instead, she slowly reached up and pulled the hood back just enough for him to see her face. What Daniel saw made his chest tighten. Her skin had a faint silver glow, like moonlight on water. Strange patterns shifted and shimmered across it as she moved. Her eyes were bright violet, almost too bright to be natural. He didn't know what species she was, but in that moment, he knew one thing for sure. She wasn't human. Before Daniel could say anything, the sound of boots returned, closer this time. She grabbed his wrist with surprising strength. "If you want to live," she whispered, "you have to help me." And just like that, Daniel's quiet night in the city was over. Whatever she was running from, he was running from it now, too. too. The rain had not slowed. It came down in cold sheets that blurred the lights of the city. Daniel and the girl moved quickly through the wet streets, the sound of boots echoing somewhere behind them. He could still feel the warmth of her hand from when she had grabbed his wrist. Even though she had let go now, she kept her head low, the hood back over her strange, glowing skin. He wanted to ask questions, but every time he opened his mouth, she moved faster, glancing over her shoulder like a hunted animal. The market noise had faded, replaced by the hum of distant traffic and the hiss of rain on metal. Daniel realized they were heading toward the industrial part of the city, a place full of warehouses and narrow lanes where shadows could swallow you whole. At the corner of a rusted fence, she stopped suddenly. Her chest rose and fell, quickly, not from running, but from the tension in her body. "You shouldn't have helped me," she said, her voice barely audible over the rain. "Now they'll come for you too." Daniel almost laughed at the absurdity of it, but her eyes, those impossible violet eyes, made him believe every word. Before he could respond, a sharp beam of light swept across the street. They ducked behind the fence, crouching low. A drone floated past, its dark frame humming, the lens scanning the road with slow, deliberate movements. Daniel felt his heart hammering against his ribs. He had seen surveillance drones before, but never one like this. The way it moved felt intelligent, like it was smelling the air. The girl closed her eyes, her fingers twitching slightly, and the drone paused. For a moment, Daniel thought it had spotted them, but then it drifted away. Turning down another street, he let out a breath, but she didn't move. Her jaw was clenched, her hands trembling. "I can't keep doing that," she whispered. "It leaves a trace." Daniel had no idea what she meant, but he could see it had taken something out of her. Like holding her breath underwater for too long, they moved again, slower now, until they reached an abandoned loading dock. The girl slipped inside through a broken side door, and Daniel followed. The air inside was stale, filled with the scent of rust and old oil. In the dim light, he could see her more clearly, thin, but not weak, her movements precise, cautious. Her eyes scanned every shadow before she spoke. "If they find me, they will take me back to the one who marked me," she said, "and he will not let me go again." Daniel leaned against the wall, his clothes dripping rainwater onto the dusty floor. "Then tell me what you are," he said. His voice was calm, but inside he was still trying to understand what he had gotten himself into. She met his gaze, and for the first time, he saw hesitation in her expression. "My name is Lyra," she said. "I'm not from any world, you know, and I don't have much time." Before Daniel could press her for more, there was a sharp metallic sound outside, like boots on a ladder. Both of them froze. The noise came again, closer this time, and Daniel felt the hair on his neck rise. Lyra's hand went to the strap of her bag, her eyes narrowing. The door they had entered through creaked slightly, as if touched by someone's hand. The rain outside masked most sounds, but not that one. Daniel moved closer to her without thinking. The room felt smaller now, the air thicker. He didn't know who was on the other side of that door, but he had a feeling they weren't here to sell grilled meat. He glanced at Lyra, and in that moment, without words, they both knew if the door opened, there would be no talking, only running or fighting. The creak stopped. Silence filled the warehouse, and then, faintly, the sound of a low, mechanical voice spoke in a language Daniel didn't understand. It was followed by the click of something heavy being loaded. Lyra's grip on her bag tightened, and Daniel could see a spark of something in her eyes. Not just fear, but a kind of dangerous resolve. Whatever she truly was, it was clear she was not helpless. The metallic voice outside faded into the rain, but Daniel knew they hadn't gone far. Lyra stepped away from the wall, her bare feet almost silent on the dusty floor. She moved toward a stack of old crates, her body low, her violet eyes scanning the shadows like she could see through them. Daniel stayed close, every muscle in his body tight. Suddenly, The sharp crack of glass breaking came from the far side of the warehouse. Daniel's head whipped toward the sound. A dark shape dropped through a broken skylight, landing with the fluid grace of a predator. The figure stood tall, its armor black and wet with rain, and in one smooth motion, it drew a weapon that glowed faint blue along the edges. Lyra didn't wait. She grabbed Daniel's arm and pulled him behind the crates. Crouching low, her breathing was steady, but he could feel the tension in her grip. The armored figure began walking, each step slow but deliberate, the sound of metal boots echoing in the empty space. Daniel risked a glance over the crates and caught sight of its face, or rather, the mask, a sleek design with no eyes, only a shifting silver surface. The figure stopped, its head tilting slightly, and Daniel realized with a jolt that it was listening. The silence in the warehouse was so complete that Daniel's own heartbeat felt too loud. Then, without warning, the figure turned and fired. A bolt of light hit the wall behind them, sending shards of hot metal flying. Daniel ducked, his ears ringing. Lyra was already moving, her hand flashing to the side of her bag, pulling out a small, curved object, no bigger than her palm. She pressed it against the floor and tapped it twice. A low hum spread out, vibrating through the wood and concrete. Daniel felt it in his teeth. The armored figure froze mid-step, its weapon dropping slightly. "Now," Lyra whispered. She darted toward a side passage Daniel hadn't even noticed, a narrow opening between two collapsed shelves. He scrambled after her, the hum still buzzing in his bones. They slipped into the dark passage, just as the figure's mask shifted again, a faint glow spreading across it like veins of molten metal. The passage was tight, forcing them to move sideways at times. The air was thick with dust, and bits of debris crunched under their feet. Somewhere behind them, the hum stopped, and a heavy, deliberate footstep echoed into the narrow space. Daniel felt a wave of cold run through him. They were being followed. Lyra's pace quickened, her fingers brushing along the wall as if she knew exactly where she was going. "This way," she said, her voice still calm, though Daniel could see the faint silver light along her skin flickering faster. They emerged into a small, half-collapsed storage room, moonlight spilling through gaps in the roof. Before Daniel could ask what next, she grabbed his wrist and pulled him to the center of the room. Her eyes glowed brighter than before. "You need to trust me," she said. He barely had time to nod before she tapped the floor again with the curved device, but this time the hum was sharper, faster. The boards under them shifted, revealing a hidden hatch. Cold air poured out from below, and Lyra jumped in without hesitation. Daniel hesitated for just a heartbeat, hearing the footsteps drawing closer. Then he followed her into the darkness, the hatch closing above them with a soft click, sealing them away from the rain and from whatever was hunting them. The air beneath the hatch was cold and damp. Daniel landed on solid ground, but it felt uneven, like old stone. Lyra moved ahead without hesitation, her silver glow faintly lighting the narrow tunnel. The walls were lined with corroded pipes and streaks of moisture. Somewhere far above, the rain still hammered the city, but down here, there was only the drip of water and the soft sound of their footsteps. Daniel tried to match her pace, his eyes adjusting to the dim light. He noticed that her glow wasn't just on her skin. Faint lines of it pulsed along her neck and down her collarbone, almost like veins of liquid light. When she caught him staring, she quickly pulled her jacket tighter, but not before he saw it. A symbol burned into the side of her neck, glowing with a slow rhythm. "What is that?" he asked, his voice echoing off the tunnel walls. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she stopped, placing her hand against the wall, listening. Only when she was sure they were alone did she speak. "It's not a tattoo," she said softly. "It's a claim mark." The words felt heavy in the cold air. Daniel frowned. "Claim mark." She met his eyes, her violet gaze unwavering. "It means I belong to someone," she said. "Someone who doesn't lose what's his." Daniel felt an uncomfortable chill. person?" he asked, though the way she said it made him think the word might not fit. She nodded. "Not just a person," she whispered. "A ruler." They kept walking. But now Daniel's mind was filled with questions. He wanted to know who this ruler was, why she was running, and why those armored men were so determined to find her. But every time he opened his mouth, the glow of her mark seemed to catch his eye, hypnotic and unnatural. The tunnel widened into a small underground chamber, lit by a faint blue light leaking from cracks in the ceiling. Lyra sat down on a broken piece of concrete, her shoulders slumping as if the weight of the day had finally caught up with her. Daniel leaned against the wall, still watching her. "You can't hide that mark forever," he said. She gave a bitter laugh. "I can't hide it at all," she replied. "It's not just on my skin, it's in me." It sings to him across the void. Daniel didn't know how to respond. He wasn't sure he wanted to understand what that meant. A sudden metallic clank echoed through the tunnels. Both of them froze. The sound came again, closer this time. Lyra's glow dimmed slightly as she pulled her hood up, but the mark still pulsed faintly beneath the fabric. Daniel's gut tightened. Whoever was following them now knew exactly where to look. She stood quickly, her voice low. "Once he finds me, there's no escaping again." She glanced at Daniel, something almost pleading in her eyes. "If you stay with me, you're choosing to stand against him." Daniel didn't move. The drip of water seemed louder now, the air heavier. He had no idea who him was, but the fear in her voice told him it wasn't just a man. It was something much worse. The metallic clank came again, this time from just beyond the chamber's entrance. Daniel's fists clenched. Lyra's hand slid into her bag, fingers curling around something unseen. The blue light above them flickered, and the shadows stretched along the walls like they were alive. Somewhere in the darkness ahead, a voice spoke a single word in a language Daniel couldn't understand, and Lyra's mark flared bright enough to paint the chamber in silver. The silver light from Lyra's mark spilled across the cracked walls, making the chamber feel smaller. Daniel squinted against the glow, his instincts screaming at him to move, but Lyra stood frozen, her breathing shallow. The shadow in the tunnel shifted, and a figure stepped into view, its armor darker than the surrounding stone, rainwater dripping from its edges. Daniel's first thought was that it was the same hunter from the warehouse, but this one was different, taller, heavier. The air seemed to bend around it. A low hum came from its chest plate. Not mechanical but almost alive. Lyra's hand slipped into her bag again. But this time Daniel saw what she was holding, a small sphere, no bigger than an apple, covered in faint runes. The armored figure stopped just inside the chamber, tilting. Its head, its mask had no eyes, only a smooth black surface that rippled slightly. Daniel felt a pressure in his skull, like something was pushing at his thoughts. Lyra staggered, clutching her head. "He's trying to call me back," she whispered, her voice trembling. Daniel didn't know if she meant the man who marked her or the thing standing in front of them, or both. The figure took one slow step forward, and the silver glow on Lyra's neck pulsed violently. Daniel grabbed her arm, pulling her toward the far side of the chamber. But the stone wall there was solid, no hidden doors, no passages. Lyra's hand tightened around the sphere, her jaw set. "Close your eyes," she said. Daniel hesitated. "Now," she snapped. He obeyed, and a sudden burst of heat washed over him. The sound that followed wasn't like an explosion. It was more like the air itself tearing. The pressure in his head vanished, replaced by a ringing in his ears. When Daniel opened his eyes again, the figure was gone. The sphere in Lyra's hand had turned to ash, drifting between her fingers. She sank to her knees, her glow dimming until it was barely visible. Daniel knelt beside her. "What did you do?" She didn't look at him. "Bought us a little time," she said. Her voice was tired, almost breaking. "But he knows now. He knows exactly who you are." Daniel frowned. "Me." Lyra finally looked at him, and for the first time, there was no guarded wall in her expression. only raw fear. You touched me when the mark was active, she said. Now it's linked to you, too. Daniel felt his stomach drop. The sound of dripping water suddenly seemed louder, colder, and somewhere far away, in the unseen dark, a deep, slow heartbeat began to echo through the stone. The heartbeat in the stone was faint at first, but it grew with every passing second. Not a sound exactly, more like a vibration in the bones. Daniel tried to shake it off, but it was inside him now, matching his own pulse. Lyra pushed herself to her feet, swaying slightly, the dim silver glow of her skin flickering like a candle about to go out. We have to move, she said, her voice rough. Daniel didn't argue. He followed her back into the narrow tunnel, their footsteps muffled by the damp earth beneath. The air grew warmer, the deeper they went, carrying a metallic temps that made his tongue taste like blood. Lyra didn't slow, her eyes darting from wall to wall, as if searching for something only she could see. Daniel's mind kept circling back to her words, linked to you two. He wanted to ask what that meant, but the tunnel bent sharply, and a strange light appeared ahead, soft and shifting like moonlight reflected off water. Lyra slowed, her hand lifting in warning. The light wasn't coming from a lamp or an opening. It was alive, flowing along the walls in thin, branching lines. As they drew closer, Daniel saw that the lines were moving in rhythm with the heartbeat. Lyra touched one of them with her fingertips, and the silver of her mark pulsed in answer. She hissed in pain and jerked her hand back. He's already spreading through the tunnels, she said. We're running through his veins. Daniel glanced behind them. The dark seemed heavier now, pressing in. Then where do we go? She pointed upward, toward a rusted metal ladder, disappearing into the shadows above. Surface, she said. Daniel went first, the rungs slick with condensation. His boots slipped once, but Lyra's hand on his back kept him steady. When they reached the top, he shoved at the hatch. It didn't budge. Lyra joined him, pressing her palm against the metal. Her skin flared with light. The sound of something unlocking clicked deep inside the mechanism. The hatch swung open with a groan, and cold night air poured in. Daniel climbed out into a narrow alley, the rain still falling, neon signs flickering in the distance. Lyra emerged after him, pulling the hatch shut. For a moment, Daniel thought they were safe. Then he heard it, the sound of footsteps, not from the tunnel below, but from the rooftops above. Lyra's head snapped upward, her eyes widened. They're faster now, she said. Daniel barely had time to register the shadow leaping from one roof to another before a shape dropped into the alley ahead. Blocking their path, it was smaller than the armored hunters from before, but its movements were quicker, its limbs bending in unnatural ways. The mask it wore split open down the center, revealing a flash of jagged metal where a mouth should be. The heartbeat in Daniel's bones quickened, syncing with the creature's movements. Lyra stepped in front of him, her glow returning in a sudden flare. You can't let them touch you, she said. Daniel clenched his fists. Feeling the weight of the warning, the creature tilted its head, studying them. Then it lunged. The creature's lunge was faster than Daniel's eyes could track. One moment it was crouched in the alley, the next it was almost on top of them. Lyra moved first, her body a blur of silver light. She slammed her palm against its chest, and a ripple of energy burst out, throwing the thing back into the wall with a wet, metallic crack. Daniel stumbled, but didn't fall, the heartbeat in his bones pounding so hard it hurt. The creature twitched on the ground, its limbs bending back into place like a puppet being reset. Then it hissed, not air, but a sharp, grinding sound that made Daniel's teeth ache. He felt something push at his mind, a pressure like cold hands trying to pull him forward. Lyra grabbed his wrist and yanked him back. Don't look at its mask, she snapped. Daniel forced his eyes to the ground, focusing on the rain splashing at his boots. The creature's steps were silent now, but the vibration in the air told him it was moving again, faster than before. Lyra reached into her bag, pulling out another device, not a sphere this time, but something like a blade made of dark crystal. It pulsed faintly, as if alive. She didn't hesitate. She handed it to him. "Strike the mark if it grabs me." Daniel shook his head. "What mark?" "Mine," she said. "If I go under its control, you cut it out before it takes you to." He didn't have time to argue. The creature lunged again, this time feinting toward Daniel before twisting toward Lyra. She caught its wrist, but it was stronger than it looked. Pinning her against the wall, the silver glow of her mark flared violently, and Daniel saw her eyes start to lose their color. Without thinking, he moved, the rain cold on his face. The crystal blade warm in his hand, he drove it toward the glowing mark, and for a split second, the alley exploded with light. The creature shrieked, not in pain but in rage, flinging itself backward and vanishing into the shadows with impossible speed. Lyra slumped to the ground, gasping. The glow of her mark had dimmed to a faint flicker. Daniel dropped beside her, the blade still in his hand. "You okay?" he asked. She looked at him with something like disbelief. "You would have done it?" she said softly. "You would have cut it out." Daniel didn't answer, because they both knew he would have. Somewhere above, another shadow moved across the rooftop, slower this time, watching. The rain washed down over them, hiding their faces, but Daniel felt the truth settle between them. This wasn't over, not even close. The mark had tied them together, and whatever ruled over it wasn't done with either of them. Lyra pulled her hood back up, her voice low. "If you stay with me, you'll be hunted until one of us dies." Daniel stood, offering her his hand. "Then we'd better make sure it's not us." She took it, and together they stepped into the neon-lit streets, disappearing into the storm.